witness from Hamilton that wrote this book. Memoirs from the last year of the European Air War, 1944 to 1945. James Mahoney, and he lived here for quite a while, and married Polly Mahoney. So that's available here at our library, so if you'd like to read that. And then can I borrow this, John?
Sure. I got what I needed.
Good. Stan Harris, who's also another local person, and he has a lot of trouble hearing. And I said, come, we'll put you right up front. But I don't see him here tonight. He brought this book in to the library this last week and wanted to know if the Historical Commission wanted it. And we have 3 copies. He said, oh, all right. So then he went in the back, looked at the exhibit, came back out. I have an idea. He said, I'm going to give this to you so the library can have either a donation or whatever, and somebody who needs it can get it. So the copy is available tonight. I know one person who'd like it. Is there anyone else who doesn't have this who would like it? And we'll have a drawing if we have enough people.
What is it?
This is a book of remembrance. It's from the Wives and Mothers Club, and it's featuring Madison County dedication to the memory of the lives that were given in World War II. And it has pictures in it of,
Oh, wow.
okay? John?
Everyone who served, not necessarily, they didn't
Everyone who
necessarily
served?
give their lives. Those are people who served from
There's all-
this area. That's
Okay.
in memoriam pages. The
And then the rest
rest
of the pictures here. So if somebody doesn't have it, you have a relative that this is something that you really wanted.
You should feel very fortunate if you win it. The county does not have a copy of that, and it's very, very expensive to buy. So the fact that they're putting it up and giving it away for free is really a neat thing.
And of course, Stan said if they wanted to give the library a donation, we would think that would be good too.
Yeah.
But I know one person, how about we leave it if you are interested, see me afterwards. I know one person already, and if there's a couple people who'll have some kind of drawing, we'll be able to do it, all right?
You want to see a picture of Don Ray as a young man.
All right, and, oh, wow, we're delighted with the number of people here.
Yeah.
All right. Matthew, your turn.
I want to thank everybody for coming out. This is by far our best attended event. This is our 8th veteran we've interviewed at the different libraries throughout Madison County as part of Archives Month. Archives Month is New York State way of celebrating our collections that we generally house in basements and attics and whatever facilities we have to house them. Over to your right is our Archives Month display. The big board is from Madison County Historical Society. Madison County, we posted 2 stories. One of Philip Ackerman, who was a soldier who was killed in action in the Solomon Islands when his ship was torpedoed. His family was kind enough to write a story about him, and we put that out there, as well as images of his the telegram that his mother received after he was killed, and some newspaper clippings with him. We also put up the journal entry of Paul Tonello. Paul is 102 years old. He's still alive and lives by himself in Oneida. He's full of piss and vinegar. He will not talk in public, but he let us take his journal, and we made some copies so that you could kind of look through. They deal with different parts. He flew 71 bombing missions as a tail gunner over what they call the hump, which would be the Himalayan mountains in China. So he flew from China to India generally, but they also did bombing missions over China and Japan. China was held by Japan, so some of those letters are really neat and tell some good stories. And before we get to our veteran, who we'll talk to in a minute, we thought we'd tell you a little bit about Madison County's time in the war, and I want to congratulate you. You've been awarded the Grove Havener Push the Button When I Point at You award, so you can make the slide. The middle one. The thing that I normally have to do with has mysteriously disappeared, so we're going to make do with what we have. But I always like to start with, does anybody know what newspaper this is? So it's the Community Commando.
Is it from Oneida Community?
It's the Oneida Community. The Oneida Community during the war published its own newspaper, as it did prior to and well after the war, for its members and for its employees. Oneida Community received some $54 million in military contracts during the war, and they were one of the rare newspapers that was not governed by the U.S. Rules and censorship, because it was a private newspaper. So we get a lot of information from them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I'll do this while I walk around, and then I'll... So approximately 16 million soldiers served from the United States overseas during the war. Roughly 1.3 million of those came from New York. Roughly 4,000, we're going to guess, came from Madison County based on numbers. We don't know the actual numbers because information will not be released until 2020 when census information from that era is released. So we're going based on 10% of the population at the time. Over 400,000 soldiers died while serving. Some 31,000 of those were New York soldiers, and some 170 were Madison County soldiers. The New York State official list is 103, I believe. We found about 67, 68 more. The state rule was wherever you enlisted, that's where you were from. So if you were from Madison County but enlisted in Watertown, you were from Watertown for their purposes. We've gone back and tracked soldiers that had roots and ties to Madison County. And we have a pretty thorough list, as well as at the World War II Memorial in Wampsville, they put up a pretty good list as well. The first soldier to die was a gentleman by the name of Laverne Austin from Perryville. He was on the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor. He was the only Madison County resident that we found so far that died in Pearl Harbor. It's kind of an interesting story. There was another soldier. He was not the first soldier listed in the media as being killed from Madison County. That taboo goes to Bob Lasher. Bob is still alive and kicking. Bob was on the USS West Virginia, which was hit by a torpedo. He was actually inside the ship's guts. When it got hit, they were locked in. He was able to escape. He actually watched the Arizona blow up. Went on to serve throughout the Pacific Theater. We interviewed Bob. He will be shown next week at the Chittenango Public Library. I hope you debate coming. The last resident that we know was Michael Bruno of Canastota. He died of complications of double pneumonia on September 24th, 1945. Kind of an interesting tale with him. There were other soldiers that would be listed later than him. Most of those, actually all of those, were either killed in the prior years in a plane accident or they were lost at sea. The New York State, or the federal government, did not list you as deceased until 1 year after you had gone missing. So a lot of guys that are listed after actually probably died a year before, so we consider Michael to be the last one that passed away. Colgate University kind of took on an interesting role during the war. They were one of 131 colleges and universities to take part in the V-12 college training program. Basically what it was if you went to Colgate University and graduated, you were given a beeline to an ensign position in the Navy. A number of local colleges did. Syracuse University, Columbia University, RIT took part in this. Morrisville had its own program that they were working on. We don't really know too much about it. Morrisville also kind of has an interesting take. We've been told a former employee of Morrisville was one of the key cogs in the Marshall Plan, which was the redevelopment of Europe after the war. We're still kind of researching, trying to find a little bit more about that story. So we'll switch gears a little bit here and talk a little bit about what happened with industry-wise in Madison County. In Madison County, like most places, we changed during the war. We changed our manufacturing. Obviously, a lot of our employees left, so our employees changed. But most of our manufacturing was still located in the northern part of the county, and one of the oldest ones was the old National Casket Building, which at that point was Stanton Paper Box. Stanton Paper Box was formed in 1906. It moved in the 1920s to the Stanton Paper, the Casket Company facility. During World War II, they produced boxes. They didn't change a whole heck of a lot. They produced boxes before the war, they produced boxes during the war, and after the war they continued to produce boxes until the 1990s when they went out of business. The building itself died in one hellacious fire in 2006. Oneida Limited, I talked a little bit about, I said they got $54 million in contracts. Oneida Limited made money two ways. Number one, they made a lot of money on the contracts. Number two, they made a lot of money on the soldiers, and specifically the girlfriend and wives of the soldiers. Oneida Limited became one of the most brilliant marketing companies in the world during World War II because they decided to target a different demographic that hadn't been targeted before. Looking at those photos, any guesses? Women. When Grove was overseas fighting, they went after Grove's girlfriend and they said, Grove's girlfriend, Grove doesn't want to come back and eat on paper plates or port china. He wants to eat on the finest china in America. And what woman would deprive their man of eating on the finest china in America? Worked brilliantly. They sold record numbers. They marketed specifically in Women's Day magazine. Good Housekeeping, places like that. It was a brilliant scheme. They were one of the first companies to do it. They later actually started using women in their advertisements. Prominent women became even more popular. And they did a lot with that market. In terms of wartime production, they produced silverware, surgical tools, rifle sights, parachute releases, hand grenades, shells, survival guns, bayonets, aircraft fuel tanks, and chemical bombs. A massive collection of stuff. This is either a B-17 or B-24. Some of the veterans can probably tell better than I can.
Neither one.
Neither one. Which one is this?
That is, it's a
It's a cargo plane?
It's a Curtis Commando.
We were told they made gas tanks for B-17s and B-24, and this was the clipping that was published with the newspaper clipping.
They also made incendiary bombs, made over 1 million.
The chemical bombs, yeah.
Over 1 million of them.
They also, during the war, took over the Rex Watson Corporation. The Rex Watson Corporation, some people may know better as the Watson Wagon Company. During World War I, they actually gained a lot of prominence they had a dumping style wagon that was very popular overseas for two reasons. One, for the development of roads. Two, for the removal of bodies. It was a pulling wagon. It wasn't powered. After the war, they kind of went down the wayside. They reformed as the Rex Watson Company, and they started producing buses. As the war broke out, they went belly up again. Oneida Limited actually took over the Rex Watson Company, and this is one of the things they produced. Any guesses as to what this is? Looks like a camper.
Yeah.
It's a mobile photo development lab. They were most commonly used on naval ships, but they were pulled around a little bit in Europe. Needed a place to develop photos, intelligence photos, stuff like that while they were on the move. This gave them the ability to do that. You can kind of see over here, there's almost 10 of them being built at the same time. Along with that, they also produced pontoon bridges. This was the two major things. They had a huge facility. They were able to do this. They didn't produce the trucks, but that's a truck that carried them. I'm told, maybe you can answer this one, that's a Sherman tank crossing the bridge. It's awful hard to read. Let's see, but either way, it's a tank crossing the bridge. So they're obviously very powerful bridges. We have had a couple veterans talk about crossing rivers and the need for pontoon bridges. It's quite interesting. So those actually came out of Canastota as well. During the war, Oneida Limited, the Rex Watson facility earned 1 E award for excellence. They earned 3 stars for wartime production. As a common theme here, the factory that housed it was burned down in 1994 during a suspicious fire. Oneida Limited earned, I believe, on their own, the facility in Sherrill earned, I believe, 3 E awards as well as a number of stars for excellence. So we did a good job in our military production. This is one of my favorite stories, and unfortunately, it's not much I can give you on it. Westcott Chuck was a company that started in the late 1800s, was around till the 1960s. They made keyless chucks. Keyless chucks are something that's still used today in power tools specifically. It's just a way to lock a tool into place. After the war, the United Daily Dispatch did a feature on what businesses did during the war. And Westcott Chuck put just a few words. They put, "We worked on the Manhattan Project." Does anybody know what the Manhattan Project is? The atomic bomb. What they did not put, there are no military contracts available from that era that I've seen yet that deal with Madison County. My guess is the military came to them, especially with the Manhattan Project, if you've ever read about it, came to them and said, "You're making this style of chuck, here's your designs, make it, we'll pick it up next Tuesday." I don't think they had a lot of knowledge of what they were building it for. But kind of an interesting side note that Madison County dealt with the Manhattan Project. The company of Master Craftsman was a fine furniture company. If you're familiar with Oneida at all today, I believe it is Hardin Furniture's facility now. But back then it was the W.J. and Sloan facility, company of Master Craftsman. During the war they produced two things. They produced furniture for naval ships and they produced wings for gliders. They were a fine furniture place after the war. They got purchased and became part of Keller Furniture Company. And as I said, now it's the Hardin facility. Oneida Heater is kind of an interesting story. The building that became Oneida Heater was a vault company that went out of business shortly before the war. During the war, they started to produce aluminum heads. I've talked to 2 folks that worked there. They don't know what the heads were for or what they were used on. They know they were aluminum. They know they were heads. The facility was updated to do this production. After the war, since the facility was updated, it was purchased and became the Oneida Heater Company. They produced furnaces, Oneida Royal specifically, heaters, which were pretty popular up until about the 90s. And our last one's kind of a fun story. Keller Laboratories. Keller Laboratories really wasn't a place, but if you're familiar with Oneida, there was an old car company called the Keller Motor Company. They sold Fords specifically. During the war, it was very difficult to get cars and tires for cars. So Hugo, who was operating the facility, decided he would go and invent something. He invented a hand crank that when a soldier's arm was wounded, would take and wrap the plaster around the arm instead of having to have a nurse put it on one at a time. Saved a lot of time, saved a lot of money, was very popular. He patented it. The company, which you see up here that says women working for him, earned an E award from the Army and Navy. They had a big party when they got the award at the United Public High School. That's the invitation. Bud Keller, who was the son of Hugo, is a World War II veteran, is still alive today, living at his home in Wampsville. Maybe he's available. After the war, Hugo thought he was going to make a lot of money on this device, got excited, and found out that it was too expensive for anybody to buy. He would go on to continue to invent. He never really had anything quite as prominent. He made a fishing lure that was quite popular, but that was about it. So without further ado, I'm going to sit here with Grove, and I'm going to get out of this. Grove asked me to set up some photos. Are you ready to roll? All right. Okay. Grove Havener served in the Navy. I'm going to block it just for a second.
No,
Grove Havener served in the Navy, and we're going to start right from the beginning because you actually have an interesting story about enlisting in the Navy because you weren't allowed originally.
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps.
yeah.
My apologies.
There's a big difference.
Yes. You were in high school when you wanted to enlist.
Oh, yeah. I went to, I don't want to stand up.
Okay.
I was in my senior year, and it was 2 or 3 months before graduation. I went up to Syracuse and I enlisted and I passed everything, but they said go home and get your diploma, then come back, which I thought was all right. But when I went home, another buddy of mine said they've got a war service diploma out now, and we took it and passed it. The next day, got a notice, report to Syracuse, quick. They threw us on a train and headed for Paris Island. That Paris Island, a lot of people thought it was kind of tough. But that was about the easiest part of training for the Marine Corps. When I went to school, we played a little basketball, football, and baseball, plus working on the side. I was in pretty good shape. A lot of guys that are in the service, 20 years old, they were old guys, and they couldn't keep going the way they should. But I don't know. I don't know what else.
Did you do any special training after boot camp?
We had to do extra. We went over to the Hawaiian Islands and did that after we got out of boot camp. They shipped us over to. We were at the Marine headquarters over there, and then they shipped us out to Maui.
Okay.
Well, they didn't have my name down. I don't know where they got it. When I got out there, they had a place set up for the troops who were moving in, and then they were going to ship them over to Maui. And one of the big wheels there in the fleet headquarters picked out me and another guy to go carry messages. They didn't have the phone facilities and stuff then. That's all we did one day there, sit, run messages from one room to the other, go get the lunch for the guys or whatever. And I thought that was kind of crazy, but there was a notice come up on the bulletin board that the people that I was with out there, the whole platoon and everything, they were leaving the next night at 7 or 9 o'clock, heading for Maui. Well, I was with them when they went. I never reported whether I was going to leave or what. I just took off. I wasn't going to sit there on my butt all that time. I could have been there, probably. But they put us through the mill over in Maui, too. 25-mile hikes. And it really bothered a lot of people. Especially when they couldn't get the smoking lamp out. Can you people hear me back there?
Yes.
Yes.
Because I want to make sure. I've been trying to keep my voice up in the air so people can hear it. I know what it's like to sit and My son don't talk very loud, I have to tell him to speak up.
So you're training on Maui. Where did you go from Maui?
Maui, we got aboard ship and headed for, we didn't know where we were going.
They just said, get on the ship, we'll tell you where
Yeah.
we're going.
And nobody, in fact, at the time, we couldn't write a letter home, and I couldn't get any mail from home. And we headed west. Tokyo Rose got on the phone. They had her on the radio there, and she knew where we were going. She said, "You people don't realize you're heading for Iwo Jima. When you get off in there, you'll be able to take roll call in the telephone booth." And she was all right.
What unit were you in?
Yeah, 20.
What unit were you in?
What's that?
What unit were you in?
23rd Marines, 4th Marine Division.
So, you arrived, Iwo Jima was the first place you arrived?
Right.
This is the island of Iwo Jima.
Yeah. It was 6 miles long and 2 miles wide at the biggest part.
Okay.
No, that's
Which one do you want?
that's probably one in the book, but
Yep. Let's see.
it wasn't.
This is the one.
That's where we went in. We was in the 3rd wave. First 2 waves ending, got off the beach, and we landed there.
So you land and the first 2 waves are on the beach. What was landing like?
Just trying to find a hole to get in, because they had everything psyched in with the weapons and everything, and the poor people on the beach were just getting massacred. We couldn't go very far ahead or right or left. Didn't make any much difference
How long were you on the beach?
until the next day.
And what changed that? Were they bombing overhead, or were you guys just able to make leeway?
I don't know, the planes were shooting around, but we finally, couldn't do else, they told us to take off. And we could go so far. I think we had to go, less than 30 miles to get to where we were supposed to go, and it took us 26 days to go that far before we got to the other end of the island. We might have some more pictures there. That's where the beach was. I guess we get up over that rise there.
Talk a little bit about the beach. What was it like? Were there
It was
trees
just scattered,
scattered?
just all kinds of boats that were shot up and sunk and this and that and the other thing.
No trees, just sand and debris.
No, what'd you say, trees?
No trees?
No, there wasn't a green thing on that island.
It was black sand.
Yeah. The sand would be sulfur sand, I'm guessing, or some sort of sulfur.
Yeah, it's all volcanic.
People don't realize too, the ships we went in on, they have a front end that drops down and you just jump out in the water and go take off.
How many men did you arrive with?
Well, 3 waves, so there was,
No, just your company.
I couldn't tell you just how many's in the company, 40, 50 in the company. But one guy another guy and I jumped in a hole there, and a shell went off, and he jumped and hollered, and he turned his head around. A piece of metal had gone through his helmet and stuck here in his neck. Good thing it wasn't a big one, it didn't go too far, but I hollered for a corpsman. I mean, what do you holler at corpsman for? There's no corpsman around here, they're all busy. They just yanked it out and put a Band-Aid on it and took off. I told him, go down to the beach, they'll put you aboard ship or something.
Now, you were in the Purple Heart in Iwo Jima. You want to tell that story?
Well, got the Purple Heart all right, but it was more or less not getting out of the way of something. Actually, I think it was mostly I was in a foxhole, and they had a rocket that they used to shoot off. It sounded just like an elephant. You could see it coming through the sky.
See if we can
And
find
we were held up for a little while, and I was in my foxhole there, and I told the guy, I said if I'm gonna lay down there, if you see that thing coming, let me know. Next thing you know, it landed and buried me. I think that's how I got it, but it was a big blast, I know. And then he had the nerve to say, well, I'm gonna lay down now, make sure you tell me. I said, yeah, I'll tell you when the thing's coming. That was something, they got those flamethrowers in, and that took care of a lot of people.
see if we can't find that rocket. I think it's towards the end.
And that's just some of the nice terrain.
That's it up on the upper left, correct? The rocket?
Yeah. It was, I don't know, everybody was out, seemed like they were out in the open, and there was no place to get behind unless you found a bunch of rocks or something.
So you made your way across Iwo Jima. Was there, as you made your way across, were you able to stop and eat or shower or anything like that? Or was it just work the whole time as you made your way across?
No, there was no, they brought around, we had K rations, we got 3 boxes K rations for last us the day. There was no stopping and eating or anything. It had a cigarette, it had toilet paper, candy bars, and this and that. I used to trade my cigarettes for candy bars because I didn't smoke.
When you got off Iwo Jima, where did you go from there?
Headed back to the Line Islands.
Okay. Little rest and relaxation or just for more training?
All we found out is for more training.
What kind of training?
Well, I guess they planned on, this was just before the war got over with, they planned on taking another island that hadn't been taken. They bypassed it. They said, well, we'll just go get that one where they shouldn't even bother for crying out loud. But then they dropped the bomb, and that canceled everything.
So were you in Pearl Harbor when the bomb was dropped, or were you overseas?
Trying to think. Still overseas.
You're still...
Because they were going to drop the bomb and everything, and all the places they had guns and weapons and everything built up, you know, they went and put guards on those so nobody starts celebrating.
So we'll go back to Iwo Jima because you kind of have an interesting story. If I can find the photo. The 26th day on Iwo Jima, you finally got to take a shower or rest a little bit.
Yeah,
Do you remember that story?
I remember that day. I didn't find out about it till I was out of the service better.
I don't know if you can see it, but the photo on the left, the second one in.
You over here.
Yeah.
Middle.
It's a bunch of guys getting ready to shower.
Yeah. It was nearly to the top there, and there wasn't no fighting going on. And we come on these 3 tanks filled with water, and it had been better than 3 weeks since we had our clothes off. We had to peel them off, actually. And we just stripped right down, and I looked at that darn picture 2 or 3 times after I got it. It took me 60 years before I got these photos and everything. Or no, not the photos, it was the emblems. But one time I looked at it and I said, you know, the guy right across the way there, he's a buddy of mine from California. So I remember right, he stood right across from me. And that's me with my back turned.
His best second. Yeah.
I'm standing up, one guy bending over there. Oh, God. That we were so close to the end, we didn't get bothered too much after that.
What was it like when, after the bomb dropped overseas?
Everything changed.
Not a lot of fighting after that?
No.
Did you celebrate it all?
All in a way, celebrated, yeah. I thought I was gonna go home, but I didn't.
Do you remember, tell the cigarette story.
What's that?
Do you remember the cigarette story that you told me?
Oh, the ones I've saved up to go to Shanghai?
Yeah.
The Red Cross was there, and they had sell cigarettes and this and that. This was when I was on Okinawa. And I didn't smoke or anything, but the Red Cross was gonna close up, so I went around and I was driving a Jeep all the time. Put about, I think, 20 or 30 cartons of cigarettes. I was gonna take to Shanghai on little, see what the Chinese were doing, you know. Not looking for women or anything, just. But the night before we was gonna leave the next day to go to Shanghai for 2 weeks. They said, "Come on, you lucky fellas, you're heading back to the States." Yeah,
So you had 30 cartons of cigarettes that you weren't gonna smoke and you couldn't sell.
No, I had to give away all those cigarettes because I didn't smoke.
How did you make it back to the States?
On an old tug, it seemed like. It took us forever. We didn't have much fast vehicles. In fact, on the way from Okinawa, we bypassed the Hawaiian Islands to get to California.
Whereabouts in California?
Trying to think of the big bridge there.
San Francisco.
What's that?
San Francisco?
Speak up.
San Francisco.
San Francisco, yeah.
And what was that like? Was everybody partying, celebrating?
Well, no, because we were quarantined for 3 days when we hit the States. You had to be treated and checked on carried any diseases with you or anything on the way back. And so another kid and I, we didn't want to be quarantined. The people where we were supposed to be, they had guys who lived there all the time. We took a couple of their passes and went out into California because they had a big diamond dance hall out there. They had the idea of dime and then you can dance once. Well, that was all right. I didn't do much dancing, but this other fellow and I sat there. Cop come over to my buddy there. He said, "Let me see your ID." I showed it to him. Then he said, "Well, let me see yours." He showed it to me. He says, "Okay, let's get." Kicked my butt right out of there. I wasn't old enough to drink. Yeah, you had to be 21. Yeah, that's the way it is here now. It used to be 18 here. That when I went to service and everything, it was 18 when my son was growing up. But everybody, they can't believe it. They say you couldn't get well, we got a beer. We left there. We didn't argue either because we weren't supposed to be out there. They'd had me up for 6 months if they'd have caught me. I'm the fella. But
How did you get home from California?
California, train.
How long a train ride?
I forget. It was like on the way out to California. It seemed like it took forever.
And you arrived in Syracuse?
Yeah, we had to stop in Chicago. That's where I got discharged.
Okay.
And into Syracuse.
And was anybody there waiting for you, or did you have to walk home, or?
No, there was actually nobody there, but my father had a cousin in Syracuse. And when I got there, I gave him a buzz. And, they come right down and pick me up. I had to stay overnight with them, and I was going out and see what Syracuse was, but they come down, took me, and I stayed overnight there, and they took me down to my mother's. And she nearly passed out.
It's kind of a sad story.
She got a letter one time before anything happened that I was wounded and had to be taken off the island, which I wasn't at the time. And VJ Day, my father got hit by a car and killed. The war got over with. And I'm the oldest of 10 kids. So my mother, she had quite a ball, I'll tell you. I don't know how the hell she ever survived. She lived to be nearly 100 too.
By 3 months.
How did you get paid?
What'd you say?
To ask him about
How did you get paid?
How did I get
during
paid?
the war?
Yeah, how did they pay you during the war? Did you get a check overseas, or was it just at home?
Oh, we got paid overseas. Geez, I made corporal there, I think it was up to $60 a month. I thought that was great.
You talked a little bit about your father. Talk about you tried to get home for the funeral and what happened.
Oh, yeah, well, I think I mentioned something about it. I had nearly enough points to get home when my father got killed. And I went to the Red Cross, and they couldn't be bothered. They didn't have the time to talk to me. But one of the fellows in the outfit I was in, he got sent home. His wife was oversexed, so he had to go home, so. That makes sense, don't it? It's funny and some that aren't so funny.
How many guys in your company made it off of Iwo Jima?
Well, what they said was, there was nearly 40 in the outfit we was in. I think four of us got off together. The others probably were either wounded or killed, or. And we got aboard that ship, and I had to go right down to the bottom of the ship because I had dysentery, and I was throwing up. I was sicker than a dog, but I sat there and I just sang. I'm off that place.
Is it okay if we let them ask you some questions?
I can't hear.
Is it okay if we let them ask you some questions?
Certainly.
Does anybody
I
have
mean,
questions?
I speak up, but I'll tell you, I can't hear out of this ear, so if anybody's going to say something, they'll have to give out a beller.
Go ahead.
What, Iwo Jima was controlled by the Japanese, and they used it as an airstrip? Was that what they were using Iwo Jima for?
That's what it was for, because they had their B-29s and everything was flying from Guam to, I lose track, Japan. And if one of them got shot up a little bit and couldn't go all the way, they had nothing to do. They'd dump them in the ocean, that's all. A lot of people drowned that way too. And they needed that for and before we got over there was planes, they had CVs and everything working on there while we were there, just to make a field there so these planes could stop, get fixed up a little bit, or at least get the guys off in it, so that's what saved a lot of lives too, I guess.
How old were you when you left
How old
for
were
the
you when you
service?
left?
How old were you?
I was 17,
And you got back before you were 21?
yes.
Wow.
But he lied.
What?
He lied.
You lied.
Yeah, because he couldn't get in at 17,
No.
but he did.
I think a lot of men
No,
did.
I got in at 17.
Did you?
Yeah, 16 you couldn't make it.
Could you see the flag raising?
Yes, we were quite a ways away, but there was a lot of confusion and you could hear a lot of people cheering and everything. We looked down the other end of the island and just as they was raising the flag.
Kind of on a side note, another Madison County, there was two flag raisings. There's the one that's made famous by the photo, and there's the actual flag raising that took place before. The original flag raising, there was a Madison County Marine that was there in the original photo. His helmet's there, and he's just off to the right. In this
Yeah, they
photo.
took two pictures of
Yep,
it.
they took two pictures.
What's his name?
Al Paviglianti. He was from Brooklyn. He was from Brooklyn originally, but he lives in Canastota now. He tells a great story of he should have just slid over a little bit to the left, and he would have been in the photo.
I don't know if any of you people have anybody in the service and didn't realize that they had medals. The way the government works, that I never knew about it until, like I say, 60 years after I got out the service. You don't get they don't send you your medals until you die. You have to send for them yourself. My son was talking to a buddy that told him that, and him and I went to Wampsville and we got that. It took us a year to get them, but we got all the medals.
Yeah, I did too.
Right?
Yep.
That isn't right.
Go ahead.
What kind of defenses did the Japanese put up on the island? And
They had every kind of machinery there. They had little small tanks. They had them buried just to the
I can find it.
rifle parts sticking out, and they had those. They had them already aimed at stuff, You walk by it, they shoot you or something. And they weren't. They.
We have a picture of it, give me just a second.
A lot of things happened. They, they had caves and everything. One cave we found, we knew there's some Japs in there. This one guy said, "Come on out, we won't shoot you." So the guy said, "Go to hell, I went to Ohio University, you're not kidding me." But the sad part of it is, they used to do that. They'd tell the Japanese, "Come out, get down to your loincloth and come on out and you'll be captive." And I've seen them do it. They let them get out there and then a guy with a machine gun mows them down. That was one of the things that I could never swallow. It burnt me up in a way, but what are you gonna do?
That tank in the lower left is what you were talking about, how they hit them.
Yeah. See, they got it aimed right down towards the beach.
Any other?
That's nice terrain there.
Any other questions for Grove? Go ahead.
Based on the beginning of your story, you sounded like you were excited or anxious to represent your country. And then I'm just wondering, what were the reasons why you were so excited to go
go in the service?
Yeah, to represent the U.S.
Well,
and then
one of the things, I guess, that I was sick of farming. The daylight, the dark, and met in morning and night when I was going to school. That's I figured out. I might as well get in the Marine Corps. But there was one fellow that 2 or 3 years ahead of me in school. He came and made a little speech. He had the uniform and everything, and it looked pretty sharp. That's one of the reasons I joined the Marine Corps. Yeah.
What was your other, get a second part?
well, then you actually experienced it, and it sounded like you were anxious to come home after. And
I what?
You were ready to come home after you were overseas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What was worse, Iwo Jima or farming?
I didn't get back to farming. I had a job waiting for me in a canning factory. I did all the cooking down in the canning factory, Stacy Basin, one year. And then got a chance to get a job. You're talking about stamping paper box. I worked there 40 years before that's counting part of the time they moved over to the casket factory. Used to make a lot of boxes.
Were you a rifleman or mortar or machine gun? What,
Did I what?
were you a rifleman, machine gun, mortar?
I carried a BAR,
Okay.
Browning automatic, squeeze off 1 or 20 rounds.
What do you think of that gun? What do you think of that weapon?
That weapon was a good one. I think in boot camp there, I think they gave it to me because nobody wanted to carry it.
Did it jam up much from the sand?
And they had somebody to carry ammunition along with you too, because it didn't take long to shoot it up.
Did it jam in the sand? Did it jam up a lot on Iwo Jima in the sand?
No, never. I never had one jam up. The only one part I had, we were all moving down through, and right in front of me there was a pile there, and this jet jumped up, and I'm walking along like this, and I squeezed the trigger, and it's a good thing I hit him, because I had one shot in there. He went down, but usually you hold the trigger, you get a couple of shots out of there.
Any other questions for Grove?
Yeah, I'd like to know. How old were you when you finally got married, and how many children did you have?
Oh, let's see, I can't remember.
He's been married for 65 years and he's 87 years old.
All right.
Because I'm his daughter.
My daughter, and my son, and three granddaughters down here, and a couple of great-grandsons home.
They're old and dead.
And the hard part about it, my wife is in a nursing home, which makes it kind of tough. You go down and visit, sometimes everything's all right, sometimes it isn't, and people, they can't help it, that's all.
Well, thank you so much for what you've done.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your service.
Well, I want to thank all you people.
Speech.
One person asked, if you had to do it all over again, would you do it?
Probably. Yep. Why not?
Thank you for coming. Next, Tuesday night at 6:30, we'll be at the Earlville Public Library with Jerry Douglas. A lot of you probably know Jerry's, he's local to Hamilton. And as I said, next Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, we'll show that interview with Bob Lasher, who survived Pearl Harbor and went on to serve in, I believe, 10 different Pacific battles as a member of the Navy. So,
Did you get my name straight this time?
yeah, you're not Leonard Ressiger this time.
In fact, I was showing my daughter and my granddaughter over here. What was the first name?
Leonard. I think everybody calls him Skip, though.
My granddaughter, she left the house and she, what was it, Leonard?
Yeah.
Says, "I'll see you later, Leonard." Smart ass.